Hey everybody, and welcome to the Artisan School, where we talk all things Pianocraft. We talk repairs, regulation, voicing, tuning, and occasional coffee. We talk about everything to inspire the technicians out in the workforce with new techniques and ways of doing their craft. And so today is really no different. I was called to this customer's house. This is a customer that owns an 1980s Steinway B. And they purchased it on the East Coast, really kind of sight unseen. And they had it brought to them. And then locally here in the Phoenix area, they had a really great tech come in and go through this. As far as I can tell from what they were telling me, it was nearly unplayable at the time. So this gentleman came in and did some phenomenal work and got everything kind of where it should be, as kind of that first pass, I would say. And I would say that what he did would be good enough for most customers. But the problem is, literally, as soon as I pulled up to the house, I could hear just an enormous amount of playing happening from inside their house as I was walking up to it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, no, these folks are that upper 1% of players that just expect so much from their instruments. So sure enough, as I go in there and meet the customers and talk about their piano, again, the work that this other technician did was great. They're just wanting something that's very specific. And the nice thing is he did all this preliminary work, so now we get to do a deep dive in what else it needs. And so whenever we're doing that upper level of work, what we're focusing in on is every little detail. It's all the little things that are going to make this piano really sing and play like a concert instrument. And so what I found right away is a couple things. I'm going to share those with you and give you an idea of how I'm going to go about doing this work, because it's quite a bit of work. And it just goes to show you how much work needs to be done on pianos, because we had another gentleman who already spent a couple days on the instrument and got it kind of teed up for me to spend a couple days on it. So right away, I could tell there was something going on with the keys. And sure enough, I think that the dip just wasn't enough. Now, I think they had it set to around 9-10 millimeters, but I want to go even deeper. I want to go a little bit deeper to like an 11. And when I was playing the notes, I could hear this vibration sound. And so when I checked the bushings were nice. However, the keyholes have been elongated just ever so much to where they're making a little bit of a knocking sound. And so that's one thing that we're going to be going and addressing. And for those that want a fairly simple fix to that, I like to use just a simple, I have like a little container, little saucer right here, water and a little bit of wood glue. And I mix it in so that it has just kind of a filmy consistency. And what I'm going to be doing with this is simply, I like to use like a little paintbrush. And with each of the keys, I'm going to go ahead and just put a little bit over this keyhole. And so what this is going to do, so you can see, I've kind of coated it. So right there, you see that I've coated it. And what it's going to do is it's going to soak into the wood fibers with that wood glue and that water. That water is going to wick in there and then expand the wood fibers. And then that glue is going to go ahead and bind everything together in that swollen position, so that allows me to go ahead and put the keys back on the key pins, but they're going to be really tight. So then I'll be able to do a nice easing of the key pins, and so they'll have a nice connection with the key pins themselves. This is a great trick. I didn't invent it. One of my mentors showed me it, and it was just like, that is a lot easier than the traditional method that I was told. What a lot of people teach, and it's a great method too, is you actually channel out, using just a little saw blade. You make a little cut right next to that hole and insert a little piece of veneer so that it takes up some of that space of that hole. Now, that is a treatment that does work, especially if you're going to have, like, if there's a lot of elongation in the hole. that's a really good technique. But I have found that 99 out of 100 pianos, this glue treatment works wonders. So highly recommend that. And once we have the glue sizing done, we're going to eliminate all that noise that we're hearing in the keys. I usually find this being an issue with high-end players. High-end meaning they're playing it a lot, they're playing intense, they're doing a lot of really crazy repertoire, so they're really digging into the instrument. And that I typically see that a lot. Robert, questions about that so far? The next thing that I noticed is that when I got to the aftertouch, it felt a little bit spongy in a weird way. There was plenty of aftertouch, so the parts were shaping properly, but there was just this weird, almost spongy feeling. And so when I pulled the hammers off, I could see this. We have, let's see if I can go like that. You can see that it's fairly, I'm trying to get the angle, it's fairly flat. Now this is one of the better ones. But we have with this flat surface, you know, that jack has to trip out and it's having to travel a lot more of the surface area than if it was nice and rounded. So here's one that I just fixed. It's nice and rounded. And I used that same yarn needling technique. And this is called knuckle bolstering. So what I did is I just went to Michael's, which is a craft store. Michael or Robert, do you have a Michael's around you? Is that a nationwide thing? Yeah, it is. So that's where I usually go. I usually go to like a Joann's Fabrics, which I hear Joann's is kind of closing, but Michael's is where I got this. I just got a simple needle and some yarn. I don't know what density I got. What it is?
Michael's or Hobby Lobby, we have both.
There we go. Yeah, so either one will carry the yarn and then a needle with a kind of a wide nose, not wide nose. What do you call that, Stacy? With a hole in it, the needle hole?
Eye of the needle.
Eye of the needle, yes.
Yeah, the eye, yeah.
So you just simply stick this through, pull it through all the way, and it helps build up that knuckle. And we're gonna have a much better feeling in that touch. The customer wants several things out of the instrument that it's currently not doing. They want it to play a little bit easier. They want the sound of the piano to be better, to be fuller, to be more vibrant. They want more tone. They want more clarity. They want more power. And so we're going to be talking about that. But there's a stiffness in it. And I think that it's not one thing, but it's several of these things. The key dip being one. Another thing that I noticed within this piano is that the hammers are all just a little tight. So we're swinging 4 times on average, 3, 4. So when we eliminate that friction, when we go ahead and fix the keyholes, and when we then recondition and bolster the knuckles, those are some major things that they're little things that add up to a lot. The other thing that I'm going to be doing with this one is I'm going to use a 7-to-1 lacquering mixture. So that is, I'm going to fill this right here. This is a little hypo bottle, and I'm going to fill it up to that, maybe just past that little mark with lacquer. Now, this is a Steinway piano, so Steinway hammers. I'm going to use this Watco lacquer. And so this is what I like to use. I make sure that it is it is not water-based, that it's actually lacquer, it's oil-based, and I like to get the gloss. So that's typically what I get. I'll get the gloss, and again, I'm going to fill it up just that little, marked right there, and the rest of it, I'm filling to the brim with acetone. So this is a lacquer acetone treatment that I'm going to go ahead and literally soak these hammers in to give it a little bit more rigidity. So the hammers as they stand right now, they just don't have a lot of life to them. So once I bolster the knuckles, once I repin all the hammers, I'm going to go ahead and again do this lacquer treatment to the hammers themselves. That's going to harden and make the felt that much more dense so that I can then do a final shaping and surfacing of the hammers. As you can see, the shape isn't really bad, but I kind of want to play around with it a little bit. Again, it's not bad. It's just, it's not as pronounced a shape as I want. And so I want to create a little bit more angle on the strike point. I want to get a little bit more punch out of that. So that's what I'm going to be doing. When we go and set our regulation, we're measuring everything within the case part. Specifically, how do we set our key height? And so what I noticed with their piano is that the keys seem like they're very low, especially compared to the key slip. They look very low. And so when you press the note, we don't have a lot of space between the top of that key slip and that key when it's depressed. So we're going to be raising up these keys probably a good quarter, not a quarter, an eighth of an inch. So I'm going to raise up everything, and I hope that will give me a little bit more room to work with my dip, because I want to increase my dip to give it just a better feel, like I can lay into the note, which will also allow me to widen my blow distance and create just more dynamic range within the key stroke. That's the plan. And
Question.
yeah.
Are you raising the key with one of these, with the punching, one of the felt on the front rail?
I'm going to be actually using some cardboard felts, some cardboard punchings.
Okay, you said an eighth of an inch, so that seemed like a lot, but
it is. But you'd be surprised that a small or medium cardboard punching, how much that actually raises it. Let me see if I actually. Yeah, you'd be amazed at how quickly those can get raised. And let's see. I'm borrowing some tools from a good friend. So like right here, it's one of these guys, Robert. And as you can see, I don't know, what is that, a 32nd of an inch? If I put one of these underneath each, that will probably raise me up to where I need to be. And luckily, the technician that was here before me did a great job at key leveling. So what I'll probably do is simply really quickly put one of these on the balance rail of every key, and it will probably get me where I want to be. Now, that being said, I was looking at the key slip itself, and it looks so tall. So what we might do at the end of this, if I'm still not liking it, we might end up, and I told the customer this, we may end up running that key slip through a table saw and cutting the bottom of it off. We'll have to remove the pins at the bottom, slice it about probably a table saw blade length or a width, and then have that there, because it does seem unusually tall. I know that Steinway has had quality issues over the years, you know, same with a lot of companies, but it could be that, hey, for whatever reason, this key slip's a little tall because the way the other parts line up, something's a little bit off. But we are going to raise these keys up in the meantime. Another thing that I'm doing is replacing the fallboard felt because it's super thick. And so I want to go get a thinner fallboard felt, which will allow me to raise these keys up to that point a little easier. But this is the kind of stuff we're talking about, is really that next layer. You know, the technician before me did the key dip, he did the level, he did a basic hammer surfacing, he even lubricated the knuckles. But what we're talking about now is going into all the little nitty-gritty, little details that when you add them all up are going to hopefully create an amazing playing experience for the artist, for the customer. But it is a lot of work. This is at least a 2-day job. And in this case, this is such a high-end player and a skilled player that I felt like this job was actually going to push me. And I wanted that, and I wanted to do it. And I got excited about that aspect of it. And they said, well, what happens if we did all this work and it just doesn't change it that much? And I said, well, I'm not going to charge you. And they're like, mouth dropped, like, what? So for me, this might be a $2,500 training that I eat, because I know it's going to make it better, but will it make it that much better? Stay tuned next week to find out if David got paid.
Wow. Couple questions. Are you going to shape the hammers before you use the lacquer treatment? Which one comes first?
Great question. I'm actually going to lacquer the hammers first. I'm going to lacquer the hammers first and let that dry for 24 hours and let it get really nice and hard. And then I'm going to get my final shape. The nice thing about doing that is whenever you lacquer a set of hammers, the next day or two, what happens is the fibers, the wool fibers come to the very top of the surface and they have these like little crusties. So they have to get a light surfacing anyways. Usually that's a light strapping, but yeah, I'm going to do it after the lacquer dries. That is a good question. Another thing that people ask is like, are you going to repin the hammers before you do the surfacing? That's a good question, because then sometimes you're taking quite a bit of mass off of hammers to get it the right shape. In some cases, I will be like, you know what, I'm going to shape these first and get them to the right weight, and before I do a swing test and do my repinning. I'm not taking off very much, and so I'm going to go ahead and just do the repinning first as I have all the hammers off. That's a good time for me to do all of the knuckle bolstering. And we're just going to, I'm probably going to turn on a show. Give me a show recommendations in the notes below. But I'll just kind of watch a show, do this, relax, maybe listen to some Enya, some essential oils, and just have a fun time going through each of these little elements.
One question. You did mention the word soak the hammers. You've mentioned lacquering hammers, but I've never seen that technique. Are you talking about using one of these and pushing on the top, not putting the hammer inside a liquid and soaking?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, that's a great question. So this is going to be, you know, it's going to be in the piano like this, or excuse me, on the action stack like this. And I'll have the hypo needle, and I'm going to simply go back and forth, and I'm going to see that liquid, that solution, enter the hammer and go all the way down. I want to go to where it comes all the way and soaks the entire hammer. I don't want it to fall off and go past that. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll kind of do a first pass where I'm soaking it, and then really, you know, I'll go through everything, and then by the time I come back, it will have wicked down to a point, and then I'll do one more quick pass to make sure it's finally soaked.
Do your needles get clogged in between? Do you have to just have tons of extra?
Yes, they do get clogged in between, depending on what my solution is. So if it's a 4 or 3 to 1, then yeah, that's a lot of lacquer inside there. A 7 or 8 to 1, usually it's okay. But that being said, I like to make a mixture for each piano, and so I don't like to let it sit, because I just don't know what's going on with it, because acetone evaporates. Is more of the acetone evaporating, and now we don't have the right ratio?
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
As you're doing this kind of work, it's funny because I was thinking about this the other day. Is what you're doing is you're working on multiple things at once. And so I was cooking dinner the other day, and I had rice going, I had broccoli going, I had some meat doing this, and all of these things were working at once. And so, for instance, here, I'm going to be removing the keys and getting these glued up, or, you know, the glue sizing going. Boom, that's happening over there. I'm going to go ahead and remove every other hammer to do my swing tests, as well as the bolstering. And so I'm doing all of these things as they're drying and things of that nature. So just think about these projects. What can I have going simultaneously? So if there's something that's drying or soaking, just kind of keep that in mind, because you want to make really good use of your time. Yeah, it's a little bit of work.
You could just do it. I saw one picture. Somebody put metal thumbtacks on the end of the hammers. And
could do that.
that's the right sound.
It's a popular trend, Robert. It might be coming back.
I came to a hammer that a technician had soaked in epoxy. He put a thin set of epoxy in all the hammers. And so they literally were like plastic hammers. hard plastic hammers. And the customer's like, I'm not, what's going on?
Well, if you think about it, a mallet percussion player, they're going to have a bag of different mallets, which are their hammers of all sorts of consistency. You know, they're going to have metal and plastic, and then they're going to have yarn hammers and just for whatever sound they want.
Yeah,
similar concept. So I guess it's a preference. But yeah, that thumbtack thing was kind of.
Yeah.
It was so trendy. Like, do you remember there used to be this lever in the older pianos, some of them, and you'd like activate it and it would come down and it would turn everything tacky. Have you ever seen that, Robert? It's almost like a damper lever. Like it just like would come down and then all of the notes would be like tacky and then you could like disengage it anyway.
Kind of give it that barroom feel.
Uh-huh.
It totally did. I don't know what it did to the strings though, because you're having this nice soft hammer pushing this hard metal object, scraping the strings. I don't know. I'm always curious if that long-term really affected the strings or not.
Well, you do. My friend at a church said he just cut 2/3 of the soundboard off because he wanted.
Oh yeah. I remember that one.
You don't feel.
I still think that guy gets an award for like a different idea, a different concept.
Definitely out of the box.
It's out of the box. So this will, I will be doing all this, what we call preliminary work today. So that's what I'm doing today, is getting everything lined up so that when I go back into the customer's house, I'm just focusing on the regulation and voicing aspect. What I'm probably going to do after I'm done with the regulation is I am going to do some string leveling and mating of the hammers to the strings, because I think that that's something that's not happening a lot. The nice thing is he has a piano right next to it. He's got about a 7-foot Kawai. And there's things about the Kawai that they love next to their 7-foot Steinway. So I get to go back and forth and be like, do you like this? What do you like about that? And so if they're like, hey, David, you've fixed this, but it just doesn't feel right, I will go, okay, let me check the dip block against what they have over there and mirror these things. So you're going to come across that eventually, where you're going to find these things, and that's really nice when they have an example piano. So sometimes I'll even, if I'm working with a high-end customer, I'll be like, go to Classic Pianos and play whatever piano. Classic is our local piano store, at least in the Portland area. Go to Classic Pianos, play some of their very high-end pianos. Tell me which one you love. I'll make a separate trip and go and see about what makes that piano, and I can bring that to yours. And so that's another thing that I like to do and recommend.
Yeah, that's definitely an art form. I judged a string solo contest a couple weeks ago. I was in the college choir room, and they had a Kawai, played great, nice and clean, and they had an old Steinway in the corner that was sort of out of use. And I went and played on it, and my gosh, I thought, what could I do to get this Steinway to play like that Kawai?
Yeah.
Because they're probably not used. It's kind of heavy and dark, but I don't really know what I would do. And so this is helpful to know that these are some tricks that you can use.
Another thing to think about, I have a friend, and she has a Busendorfer and she has a Bechstein, both 7-footers. They're both over $150,000 instruments as themselves, and she teaches very high-end students. But one of the things that she has run into is like she's even says, I might need to just go ahead and bite the bullet and get a Steinway, because so many of the times their students are performing and doing high-end recitals with Steinways, and Steinways have a unique tone. They have a unique kind of a feel. There's a placebo effect with it. There's all of that goes along with it. So it's a really unique, different thing. So a lot of times we try to mirror, like what I'm saying with this Kawai. I want that Kawai to have some of this and have this in the Steinway, but there's only so much I can do because the Steinways have a uniqueness. You know, it's like, I don't know. There's those old, American muscle cars. You got the Mustang. It's going to have a different feel and different atmosphere than something else made overseas. And we can do certain things that are similar, but we need to harness the Steinway-ness that's within the Steinway. So Steinway, you created something pretty cool, pretty unique, and there's some quirks to it, but I don't know, hats off. There's some good stuff here.
I like my Steinway. It's like a Corvette. Not all of them are the same, but there's a teacher who is a pianist and has a young chain, and her husband is a piano professor, and they want a Steinway. And she said, you know, if you see one, come across one, they don't want a Kawai or a Yamaha.
Yeah.
They want a Steinway from a young chain.
Yeah.
But told her I'd try and help her. Maybe, you know, potential customer in the making, but
yeah.
But they want it to play like their young chain. But anyhow, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. It's you know, I think that when Busendorfer, when Yamaha and Busendorfer are fairly similar in some of the way they do the regulation, I feel, and at least what I've experienced, is that they seem to maximize that blow distance through maximizing the key dip. And so with them, you have an 11+ millimeter key dip in a lot of the things that I've seen, which gives it that real, whoa, I could lay into the key feeling. You know, Horowitz had his technician, Franz Moore, dial in his Steinway to where it was just a little bit of key dip. And so I feel like a lot of Steinways really come alive when I increase that key dip, maximize that blow distance, and get a lot more range. And so that's what I'm going to be doing here. Again, this is stuff that I've just played around with over the last 25 years. There's nothing new under the sun. All this stuff was shown to me, or kind of I gleaned from this and that and put it all together, and it just is more tools in the toolbox. And so hopefully this is helpful. If you think I'm crazy, that's totally fine. We're all a little crazy.
One final question to clarify on that key dip. You're talking about the 1/8 inch on the balance rail. That's where you're adding those cardboard punchings, or you're adding them on the front rail?
So no, I'm adding
rail.
on the balance rail. I'm going to be getting it so that there's more height on the key itself in the front. And so hopefully I'm going to have enough room to work with. I'm limited with not only the key pin, right? There's this key pin. You can't go too high on the key pin on the front or balance rail pin. We can't go too high. And also we can't go too high with the rest of the case parts. So we have a fall board we need to consider. So I'm going to maximize how high I think I can go, see what that looks like with the key slip. Worst case scenario, we may run that key slip on the bottom side through a table saw. Luckily, the customer has it. When I brought up the idea, he seemed really cool with it, so that might be kind of fun. I have done that before. I haven't done it in a while. Any other questions? Stacy, is this crazy? Are we crazy?
No, we're doing it. It's going to be fun.
Do you mind giving, I don't know if this is part of the class, but kind of a status update on the Artisan School and where you are with, since we've had radio silence for a little bit. I understand some things are still cooking probably behind the scenes, but just curious. I'm not the only one.
No. And with that, we will see you next time. Follow us, click, subscribe, and you will hear more about the Artisan School. That is in the works. It is literally cooking right now, and it smells good, and I cannot wait to share it. So in the meantime, Robert, stay on. We'll talk more about the Artisan School. For those of you watching, again, subscribe so you get more free content, and I'll see you next time.